With the hum of scientific devices around him, Ravin Holt awakens in a cold, indifferent space. His eyes open, but all he can see is the dim darkness. He can't remember how long he has been asleep, only knowing that this stillness is unlike anything he ever knew on Earth. Dreams have withered in the vastness of space, and now, only solitude and unease remain. He is not the only one left behind. When Ravin realizes that he is no longer on Earth, with no bustling cities, no lively life as he once knew it, a vague fear rises within him. Humanity has been destroyed, leaving behind only faded memories and brutal wars. But just when Ravin believes he has been completely abandoned, a sound breaks through the quiet space, startling him. A strange voice, yet full of resilience and understanding. It is Xhyran, a scientist from the Xhyran race, the only survivor in this research station. She is the one who will lead Ravin out of the darkness, helping him realize that, although humanity has perished, there are still glimmers of hope blossoming in a vast universe. In this fateful meeting, Ravin not only realizes that he is the last survivor, but he must also face a terrifying truth. Humanity was wiped out after an uneven war with the Xhyran Empire. The world Ravin knew is now only the ghosts of the past. But an unexpected spark ignites within him. Xhyran not only saved him from the Cryosleep, but she is also the one who will help him rediscover the meaning of life in a world that has almost lost everything. Ravin Holt slowly opened his eyes, a cold sensation spreading through his body as he woke up. The cold came not only from the surrounding air but also from the cryosleep that had lasted for over 2 centuries. His fingers trembled, trying to regain sensation, as if the blood in his veins was slowly starting to flow again. His head was spinning, and chaotic thoughts clouded his mind. His eyes scanned the surroundings, but there was nothing familiar. Only cold metallic walls, a cramped space, and dim red indicator lights, serving as a reminder that this was not home, not Earth. Suddenly, a soft noise broke the silence, causing Ravin to start. A strange creature appeared beside the cryopod he had just emerged from. It was a woman, but she was unlike any human Ravin had ever met. Her body was made up of delicate, pale purple scales, resembling crystal. The light from the overhead lamps reflected off her body, creating sparkling glimmers. Her hair was long and light, like strands of silk, cascading down her back. Her eyes were not like human eyes, but instead had an eerie blue hue, making it impossible for Ravin to look away. "Welcome back," her voice was gentle, yet with an unfamiliar tone, as if speaking to someone from another world. Ravin felt a chill run down his spine. He tried to sit up, but his body was still weak. The disorienting feeling of being lost overwhelmed him, pushing him into a state of confusion. "Who are you?" Ravin asked, his voice hoarse from not being used for so long. "She is Xhyran, a Xhyran scientist, the only one left alive in this station," another voice echoed. Ravin turned to see another creature, large and with skin like sapphire crystal, standing at the doorway, observing him. "My name is Xhyran," the creature continued. "We could not let you wake up without knowing the truth." Xhyran smiled gently. "You have been asleep in this cryopod for over 200 years. None of us know if anyone else survived besides me. Humanity has been long gone." Ravin looked at her, unable to believe what he had just heard. "Humanity is gone," he stammered. Xhyran nodded, her gaze filled with sorrow. The last time humanity existed was in 2156. Back then, the Xhyran Empires attacked your worlds. They didn't give you a chance to fight. Humans had no strong military, no advanced weapons like other races. You surrendered without resistance. Adara's words cut into Ravin's heart like a blade. He had once been a warrior, a battle-hardened soldier, but he couldn't imagine the scene of humanity being wiped out so easily. The world he had known was now nothing but ruins and lost data. Did I survive this long sleep? Ravin asked again, his voice echoing as if he couldn't believe the truth. Adara looked at him with sympathy. You are the last one left of your kind, the only one still breathing. Although, over all this time, humanity has been erased from the universe. You are the end of a species. Each word from her felt like a wall blocking him, making Ravin feel as though he were floating in an endless void. He didn't know what to do next. His past had been erased, and his future seemed non-existent. He was no longer part of humanity, but he didn't belong to any other race in this universe either. Adara moved closer, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder as a gesture of comfort. However, Ravin, even though humanity has perished, we do not intend to harm you. We are not your enemies, but the only living beings left, and we want to help. Ravin looked at Adara, feeling an unfamiliar emotion rising within him. A strange connection he had never felt before. Could this be his last chance to find hope in a universe that had become strange and devoid of humankind? But the question still echoed in his mind, can he find a purpose in this world? Or will he forever be the last man on a dead planet? The answer was unclear. But Ravin knew one thing for certain, he had awoken, and his journey had only just begun. Ravin couldn't stop thinking about everything he had just heard. The feeling of emptiness still enveloped him, as if he were lost in a world that had no place for him. Humanity had been wiped out, and he was the last one left. Every step he took through the Aeon 5 space station served as a reminder that there was no one like him left on this planet. But he couldn't accept that. 2 centuries have passed, Ravin told himself. Then why did I survive? And if I survived, for what reason? Adara stood nearby, watching him with eyes full of concern. You're not the only one in this world, she said softly. There are other cryopods, people still asleep. We can learn about them. And maybe find out why you survived. Ravin turned to look at her, his gaze full of confusion. Other cryopods? You're talking about the others. Adara nodded. We might find more people. But you need to understand that not all of them will be like you. They may have changed more than you think. Changed? Ravin hesitated. You mean I've changed? While in cryosleep? But I don't feel any different, except for this strange sensation. Yes, Adara replied, her eyes lighting up. We've studied the physiological changes during cryosleep extensively. But the transformations you've undergone could be unprecedented. Let's investigate together. Ravin had no choice but to follow her, determined to uncover the truth about what had happened, about why humanity had been wiped out. The painful feeling of loss, of a world he had once belonged to, still lingered in his heart. He knew that only by searching for the past could he find the answers he sought. Ravin and Adara walked through the corridors of the space station to a specially protected area. This was where the important data about humanity and its war with the Xhyran Empire was stored. The metal door opened to reveal rows of storage racks filled with hard drives and data storage devices. "We'll find what we need here," Adara said, sitting down at the control panel to begin retrieving the data. Ravin sat beside her, his eyes fixed on the screen. Data about the war humanity had fought and appeared before him. Each video, each encoded segment was filled with bloody and painful scenes. The war humanity fought had been brief, lasting only 6 months, but it had been brutal. Humanity was not strong enough to withstand an empire like Xhyran. "So, we lost, right?" Ravin muttered. "Yes, but that's not all," Adara replied, her fingers moving swiftly on the control panel. "There's other data regarding humanity's research. Let's check those out." Suddenly, an old video appeared on the screen. It showed a room filled with cryopods, with the remaining humans lying in the cold glass containers. This sight was a reminder of despair but also a sign of hope. "This is all that's left of us," Ravin whispered, his eyes filled with tears. "Why did we have to endure this? We survived, but is there even a reason for it?" Adara didn't answer immediately. She continued to examine the data. Suddenly, a soft sound came from the device. "Ravin, there's something strange. This is genetic research data. This could be why you're still alive. Look," Adara pointed to a section of encrypted data, a genetic experiment conducted before humanity's extinction. Ravin looked at the screen, the numbers, and data about humanity's genetic changes stunned him. "It seems we changed before the war happened. There was some experiment that interfered with human development." Adara nodded, "Yes. Studies show that scientists try to enhance human genes, making them stronger. But some experiments went too far. They created a new generation of humans with extraordinary abilities." Gradually, Ravin began to notice changes in his own body. Not only had his physical strength increased, but his mind had also become sharper. He could sense the space around him, the feeling of time and movement as if it were instinct. With each step, he could calculate the force needed to avoid collisions, and every movement of his limbs was as smooth as a warrior trained for years. He felt the changes within him, but he wasn't afraid. Instead, it was a feeling of freedom, as if his body had been reborn. These changes could be the result of past experiments, and Ravin couldn't help but consider a possibility he had never thought of before. Could he be the one created to fight? While exploring the data, Ravin and Adara discovered that the cryopods were gradually awakening, and some of the people inside seemed different from the humans Ravin had known. The changes in their bodies and minds could make them a powerful force, but could they find a common purpose? Ravin understood that his journey wasn't just about uncovering the past, but also a fight to find what was left of humanity. He couldn't stand still knowing that there were others like him, people who had woken up and were ready to fight. He and Adara began their journey to find the remaining cryopods, searching for answers about the changes in humanity and seeing if they could rebuild what had been destroyed. However, with each step, Ravin and Adara realized that the dark past wasn't the only thing chasing them. New forces, powerful creatures, and people who had awakened long ago were becoming a major threat. Could Ravin find hope in a chaotic universe where change was uncontrollable? Ravin and Adara moved deeper into the old section of the research station, once a crucial center in the war between the empires. The cold, gloomy air of the abandoned room seemed to still carry the echoes of past battles, the sound of their footsteps resonating steadily, yet unable to erase the heaviness in their hearts. Ravin could clearly feel that his journey was not just about uncovering the past, but also confronting a reality more terrifying than ever before. They reached an underground area, where crucial data was stored, which Ravin hoped would answer everything. The screens flickered with blue light, reflecting old encrypted codes and long-hidden recordings. The data wall before them was like a puzzle, memories erased, events concealed. To decode it, Adara and Ravin had to access each data compartment, illuminating every piece of the truth. "There it is," Adara whispered as the final screen lit up. The numbers on the screen gradually transformed into clearer text. "The Xhyran Project. This is what we need." Ravin stared at the screen, his eyes widening as he understood its true nature. The Xhyran Project was not merely a program aimed at human physiological enhancements. It was a far deeper plan, a conspiracy to turn humanity into warriors with no autonomy, completely controlled and brainwashed by the Xhyran Empire. The cryopods, the human storage devices where Ravin had awakened, were not meant to preserve humanity as he had once thought. They were conversion machines, where humanity was turned into tools of war, a biological weapon completely brainwashed. An old video played, showing soldiers being prepared in cryopods. The video described the process of altering their bodies and minds, genetic manipulation, physiological changes that enhanced physical strength and combat abilities. But more importantly, it showed the transformation of their minds, where each soldier was programmed to become a puppet, emotionless, without freedom, only knowing how to obey orders. This is what happened to us," Ravin said, his voice darkening. "We're not survivors. We're forgotten weapons." Adara looked at him with a pained expression. "We were turned into warriors we never chose. But there's one thing they couldn't control, the strength of human will." Ravin felt a deep fear settle within him. Not only did he have to face the horrors of the war, but also the terrifying truth that he, along with others in the cryopods, were war machines, controlled by forces he hadn't fully understood. Another piece of information on the screen caught Ravin's attention. "It seems, some of the other cryopods are starting to wake up," he said. "They are waking up, and if what I'm seeing is true, they are no longer human." Adara was silent, her eyes darkening as she read the data. "We were wrong to think you were the only one to wake up. Others will wake up too. And this could be a disaster." A sense of confusion rose within Ravin, but it was also a powerful realization. He couldn't stand still knowing that the warriors he once thought of as comrades might become his greatest enemies. These people, with their enhanced abilities and brainwashing, might not recognize him, and could even see him as a traitor. "We have to stop this," Ravin said with determination. "If we don't act now, there will be thousands like me, warriors who have lost their humanity, leaving only brutality and blind loyalty to the Empire." Adara looked at Ravin, not just with empathy but with concern. "We must stop the remaining cryopods and find a way to halt the Xhyran Project. If we don't, we'll create a world full of mindless warriors." Ravin and Adara began preparing for the greatest confrontation of their lives. They could no longer live in this world without facing what had happened. Both knew that to stop the remaining cryopods and end the Xhyran project, they needed to learn more about the technologies and larger plans behind the Xhyran Empire. They continued to delve deeper into the data and eventually discovered a secret laboratory, where people were brainwashed and transformed into ultimate warriors. Ravin felt pain as he saw images of these warriors being trained under harsh conditions. "We can't let them continue," Ravin said with sharp determination. "We have to stop it before it's too late." But deep down, he couldn't help but wonder, had he also been brainwashed? Were the changes in his body and mind truly the result of experiments he had never known about? The battle with the ghosts of the past was slowly beginning. And Ravin knew that this fight was not just with the Xhyran Empire, but also a fight against himself. Ravin stood in the dark room of the research station, the faint light from the computer screens barely enough to see the signs of change. The next cryopods had started to activate. The remaining warriors in their cryogenic slumber were beginning to wake up. Every soft sound of the cryopod doors opening was like a signal of a new beginning, but for Ravin, it was a sign of fear. He stood quietly, gripping an old laser gun tightly, his eyes intently watching the simulation screens and the biological stats of the recovering warriors. They were not like him. Though they appeared human, these warriors were no longer the ones who fought for ideals or loved for their homeland. They were mere tools of war, fighting machines without freedom, without a past, and with no future of their own. "We can't let them continue like this," Ravin whispered, his voice hoarse, filled with conflict. "But can I save them? Or is this just genocide?" Adara stood beside him, her gaze filled with concern. She had witnessed the brutal war the Xhyran Empire had waged, and she knew well that these warriors, even though they remembered nothing of their past, still had the potential to become a terrifying threat. But she also understood that if Ravin wanted to change their fate, he would have to decide quickly. "Ravin, I understand your fear," Adara spoke gently, yet decisively. "They are weapons, but they could also be human. If we don't act, the Xhyran Empire will regain control over them. But if we save them, we'll face a stronger enemy than ever before." Ravin turned to look at Adara, his eyes full of anxiety and exhaustion. He was not just a soldier anymore. Now, he was the only one who could decide the future of these people. He remembered the feeling of awakening in his cryopod, the sensation of being abandoned in the endless space with no protection. But what hurt him more was the knowledge that these warriors would have to endure that same pain if he didn't act in time. "We need to move quickly. If I don't free them from the brainwashing program, there will be no hope for them," Ravin decided, his voice deepening, as if he had realized there were no other choices left. But as he stepped closer to the opening cryopods, he realized that saving these warriors would not be as simple as he had imagined. Even though they remembered nothing of their past, their brainwashing had turned them into emotionless machines with no sense of self. They knew only how to fight, and they fought without feeling pain, without any reason or purpose other than to obey orders. A loud noise echoed when the first warrior woke up and stood up from the cryopod. He was tall, his body solid as steel, his black eyes like an abyss, radiating undeniable coldness. He looked around, his eyes stopping on Ravin, and a chill filled the room. "Controller," the first warrior spoke, his voice cold and devoid of emotion. Ravin felt as if he had been struck. He couldn't look into the eyes of this warrior without feeling the loss, the emptiness of a person who had been stripped of everything that made them human. "You are not the controller," Ravin said, trying to hold his ground. "I don't want to kill any of you. I want to save you." But the warrior simply nodded silently, saying nothing further. His footsteps echoed heavily on the floor. They were the steps of a war machine, a machine with no emotions or desires, only a single purpose to complete the mission. The cold gaze of the warrior filled Ravin with fear. He was not only facing people who had lost their autonomy but also the brutal reality of war, and the decisions he could no longer avoid. He couldn't let these warriors become his enemies, but he also couldn't ignore the fact that if he let them live, they would only become tools in the hands of evil forces, those who sought to dominate the universe. Ravin turned back to look at Adara, his eyes filled with pain. "We can't save them if we don't free them from this brainwashing." Adara looked at him, her eyes filled with understanding. "And if they can't be saved, what do we do?" Ravin sighed, his eyes now full of resolve. "If they can't be saved, we'll have to eliminate them to protect the universe." And then, in a quiet moment, Ravin knew that this battle was not just one with the empires, but a battle within himself, with the choices he had to make. The dim light from the research station screens reflected on Ravin's face as he stared intently at the strategic map. The Xhyran Empire's system was controlled by brutal invaders, but now, they were facing an army not to be underestimated. This army had been brainwashed, turned into tools of war, but among them, Ravin believed there was still a part of humanity within. Adara stood beside him, her gaze fixed on the strategic map. Both of them knew that this attack wasn't just about freeing the warriors, it was about redeeming a part of humanity's soul. These warriors, though they had lost their freedom, still carried immense potential. But to awaken them from the Xhyran Empire's control, Ravin and Adara needed to act quickly, or else, no one would be able to reverse the situation. "This is the moment, we can't hesitate any longer," Ravin said, his voice deep and solemn. "We must attack the Xhyran base. If we don't do it now, we'll never get another chance." Adara looked at him, her eyes full of resolve. She understood that, no matter whether their decision was right or wrong, this was the only path to save everything they had fought for: freedom, peace, and a chance for humanity to rise again. "We can't just fight to win," Adara said, her voice firm. "We must fight to change. To build a world where humanity can live freely once more." Ravin nodded. He knew that what they were about to do was not just a simple attack. This was a battle to reclaim the future of a humanity that had been forgotten and destroyed. But in his heart, a flame of hope began to burn. He had seen the light within these warriors, and if he could help them find their true selves, that would be worth the fight. As the attack began, Ravin and Adara led their army into the heart of the Xhyran Empire's base. They faced a myriad of enemies equipped with powerful weapons, Xhyran soldiers trained to eliminate any threat. But Ravin and Adara were not alone. The freed warriors began to awaken and fight alongside them, gradually regaining their autonomy, their forgotten memories slowly coming back to life. The battle between Ravin and the invaders was a relentless bloodbath. Gunshots echoed throughout the base, and the blinding light from laser weapons illuminated the dark space. But what unsettled Ravin was not the brutal fights, but the emotions he was starting to feel when he was with Adara. A bond that, before in the world of war and cruelty, he could never have imagined. But now, in this battle, the connection between him and Adara was the only light in the darkness, the only thing keeping him steady. In a tense moment, as Ravin and Adara were facing danger, an energy orb from the enemy flew toward them. Ravin quickly pushed Adara out of its path, but he couldn't avoid the impact. The wound on his body was painful but not serious. Adara ran to him, her hands trembling but determined as she bandaged his injury. "Don't scare me like that," Adara said, her voice hoarse with worry, but her eyes still shining with care and concern. Ravin smiled despite the pain. "I won't let you go." In that moment, both of them understood that their bond was not just a connection between two warriors, it was a love that had blossomed under the harshest of circumstances. A relationship that could only survive through fighting, sacrifice, and the trials they endured. But they had each other. And that was all they needed. Finally, they succeeded in destroying the Xhyran Empire's forces at this base. The freed warriors were no longer just soldiers, they became symbols of resurrection for humanity. And as the battle ended, Ravin and Adara stood atop the pile of rubble, looking toward the horizon, where the sun began to rise again. This was a new beginning. A new world awaited them, a world where peace and freedom could truly exist. "We've won," Ravin said, his eyes shining with determination. "But the war is far from over. We have to rebuild from the ground up." Adara looked at him, a gentle smile forming on her lips. "We will rebuild. And this time, we'll do it right." Together, they began to rebuild a new world, one where there was no war, a world where love and hope would guide the way for all. The story didn't end after the fierce battle with the Xhyran Empire. After freeing the brainwashed warriors and destroying the Empire, Ravin and Adara gazed out at the ruins of the old base. Although the victory had brought some hope, the real battle was only just beginning. Ravin was no longer a lone soldier, he had become a symbol of resurrection for humanity, one who would lead the new world. As the freed warriors slowly regained their true selves, Ravin and Adara realized that victory wasn't just about defeating the enemy. They had to start over, building a new world from the ruins, a place where there was no war, where humanity could live freely and in peace. "We won't let this world repeat its past mistakes," Ravin said, his gaze strong and resolute. "But we can't stop at victory. We must rebuild from the ground up." Adara stood beside him, a gentle smile on her lips. "We've won, Ravin. And this time, we'll do it right. Starting over, but never losing our way again." Together, they looked toward the horizon, where the sun was slowly rising once again, illuminating the vastness of space. A new beginning had arrived, and they knew that with love, hope, and perseverance, a peaceful and free world would no longer be a distant dream. Humanity's story didn't end in failure. It had only just begun again.